Rick Skeens, and I've been fighting the battle of addiction here in Appalachia for a little over 3 years now as a pastor and evangelist and as a community activist. A lot of people don't realize how bad the addiction problem is here in this region. But as you look through history, you can see that Appalachia has always had an addiction problem. If you trace the history back through colonial times, you'll see that most of the people that spread out into this area were running from the whiskey taxes that were passed up in the New England colonies in the Northeast. And that progressed as they spread further and further through Virginia and Western Virginia and Southern Ohio and into Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, the whole Appalachian region. They were making this moonshine whiskey that wasn't being taxed, so that made it cheaper and easier for people to get. Of course, that led to alcoholism back in the earliest times of this region. Then it goes on further up through the 1800s, early 1900s. In the 50s and 60s, people began growing marijuana in this region. And it seems like whatever the big fad was across the nation, whatever people were getting into across the nation, people in Appalachia took it one step above what they were doing. And in the early 2000s and late 1990s, a company by the name of Purdue Pharmaceuticals began testing a drug called Oxycontin in a community known as Hazard, Kentucky. And ever since that point, prescription drug abuse and drug addiction has just been running rampant in this region. The effects of drug addiction on this community is fivefold. We lost, in the year 2010, in my county, this is a county of 42,000 people, Boyd County, we lost 42 lives to drug-related deaths. In 2011, we lost 22, which is a little more than half of the previous year, but it's still too many. One is too many. And this effect is like a spider web in our community. It doesn't just affect a drug addict. It affects the whole dynamic system of the community. First of all, it affects the family. The families are being forced to raise their grandchildren. Parents are raising their grandchildren because the addicts can't take care of them. The parents are having to spend their life savings on their children because of treatment, repeated treatment and attempts at treatment, and legal fees and bail. The effects then spread out to the whole community. Businesses are having to charge more for the goods and services that they offer because of damaged and stolen property. People doing these things in order to get money to buy drugs. Then the community, property values in this community have plummeted over the past 10 years because of drug activity and drug dealers setting up shop next to other property, so those property values go down. And also the government is being forced to spend untold amounts of money at the county, state, and federal level to house these drug offenders. It affects every single aspect of our daily life. But I tell you today that there is a solution to the problem. I can tell you of a county by the name of Clay County, and specifically a town called Manchester, Kentucky, which is about 5.5 hours south of where I'm standing today. And that that was the same old story that I'm talking about right now. Just a community held captive by the chains of addiction, losing an entire generation at a time to drugs. And some pastors saw this activity going on. They saw the vast wasteland of their youth just deteriorating around them. And they decided to come together, united as one body, under one flag, which is the bloodstained banner of Jesus Christ. And they marched. Over 4,000 people showed up to march and pray together on one particular day in March in 2004. And after that, God moved on their community. A transformation in the way that they live was seen and manifested with God's presence there. That little community is beneficiary to a federally funded drug task force called Operation Unite. And the director of that program, her name is Karen Engel, met with us here in my county to talk about the problem that we have. And she said, you can do what you want, but I will tell you right now that the solution has to begin with the church. Coming from a federal employee, that means a whole lot. You see, the church has turned a blind eye to this problem here in my community. They don't want to recognize it, and they refuse to lift a hand to help. In order for us to beat this problem and to turn our entire region from a community of shame and oppression into a paradigm of victory in the name of Jesus, we have to become involved in the problem and become active in the problem. And the reason that it's important for the church to do this today is because God values the lives of every single one of His creations. And it's our duty and our call and our commission as His children to love every one of our neighbors as we love ourselves. That's one of the great commandments given by Christ, as we call it, law under grace. So we do have a calling and a commission and a charge given to us to love these drug addicts and these prostitutes that are selling themselves on our street corners to get drugs, and even the dealers that are dealing drugs to buy other drugs. We have a divine commandment to love them as we love ourselves. And that is when the change will come. Thank you for listening.